In this lesson, we will be initializing Firebase in our Flutter project. We have already installed Firebase through Flutterfire, and now it's time we use Firebase services. So the first thing that I want to do now is to clear everything in this main.dart file and create a void main function. Run app, inside of it will be the my app. So let's create this my app, stateful widget, rename this to my app. Alright, let's import this from material.dart. So now the initial setup has been complete. Let's move on to initializing Firebase in our project. So we'll be working with Firebase on this file. So let's import Firebase core package. So import package Firebase core / Firebase core.dart. So now we need to initialize Firebase in our main function right above this run app. So before anything is rendered in our Flutter app, we need to initialize Firebase. Alright. So right above this run app, let's use Firebase.initialize app. And Firebase needs to be initialized according to the platform the app is running on. Meaning that if I am using this app on Android, then Android Firebase options will be enabled, and if I am using it on iOS, then iOS options will be enabled in the Firebase, right? So for that we have an argument in this Firebase.initialize app called options, and the value for this option will be the class of this Firebase options. So inside of this we have a class called default Firebase option. Let's pass it in our options argument. So Firebase options dot, but first let's import this from this Firebase options. So import it. So once this default Firebase option is imported, we will be getting three options over here. So Android, iOS or current platform. So we'll be setting this to current platform, and this will initialize Firebase according to the platform we are on. Alright. And this Firebase.initialize app will take some time for the initialization because it needs to connect to the internet, right? So we'll be using a await statement over here. And as this await statement is used here, this function should be of async type. And as the function is of async type, this needs to be wrapped with a future. So here, before rendering any UI components, we are initializing Firebase first. Here you can see that we are initializing Firebase instantly when the app is started, right? And in this time, Flutter engine might not be completely started, so our initialization might not work. So we need to ensure that the Flutter engine is started and is working fine before Firebase is initialized. And for that we will be using Widgets Flutter binding.ensure initialized. This ensures that Flutter engine is initialized first and is working fine, and then the Firebase is initialized. So now we can start the debugging process, but this will bring up some issues. And we will be fixing that issue. So first let's start the debugging process. Launch emulator and then start debugging. And here you can see that there are some errors in my debug console, and my app is also not launched in emulator. And this error has triggered because this Firebase core plugin that we are using over here requires a minimum SDK version to be 19. Alright. So one thing to keep in mind while working with Flutter plugins is that if you get an error after installing a plugin, then it is probably due to the plugin issues, alright? And you will probably get the error message in the debug console. You can always copy those errors and then Google it for the fixes. And when I Googled for this error, I found that this Firebase core plugin that we are using requires the minimum SDK version to be 19. And I also found the fix for this issue on Stack Overflow. So the solution I found is to change the minimum SDK version of build.gradle file into 19 or above. So this is how it can be done. So press Ctrl P and then search for build.gradle and make sure you are inside of this Android/app, alright? And here if you scroll a little bit, in the default config you can see the minimum SDK version, alright? So change this minimum SDK version to 19. Now this will fix an issue with our debug console, alright? So now let's start debugging again. So here in my side you can see that everything is fixed and app is opened in my emulator and it's showing this placeholder widget. And if app is working fine on your side, then nothing else needs to be done. But if you are still getting an error, then there is a quick fix that you can try. So open the command palette, Ctrl+Shift+P and then type clean. So this will open up this Flutter clean. So click at it. So this Flutter clean will remove all of the packages from our Flutter project, and it will also remove all of the previously built apps. So as all of the packages in our Flutter project is removed, we will be getting error in our app. So here you go. So now we need to get all of the packages again. So open command palette again and type pop get packages. Alright. Now this will install a fresh copy of packages in our Flutter project. Alright. Once this process is completed and all the errors are gone, you can go ahead and start the debugging process again. So if the debugging process is running, stop it and then run it again. And now a fresh copy of our app will be installed on your emulator. And this fix will work most of the time in Flutter, but if you are still getting issues, you can copy the error message from the debug console and then Google for the fixes. So now let's go ahead and replace this placeholder with a material app, scaffold and some widgets. Alright. So material app with an scaffold as a home, and then body will have the text widget. Alright. And let's bring it at the center with center widget. So now Firebase has been linked to this Flutter project and is working fine. So that's it for this lesson, and in the next lesson we will be working on further improvement of this app. So I'll see you at the next lesson. In this lesson we will be working on further development of our global chat app. So the first thing that I want to do now is to change the app icon of our Flutter app. Open up your browser and Google for chat icons. So there are a lot of options available here, and most of these images are copyrighted, meaning that you cannot use this image for commercial purposes. But as we are using this for learning purpose, we can use any images over here. So as our app name is global chat, I am searching for chat icon with G. Alright. Now click at tools, select color and then transparent. So this will bring up potentially transparent images. So you can see all the image displayed over here, and I think this app icon should be great for our app. So click at the image and seems like it is transparent. So open this image in new tab and it's actually transparent. So let's save it. And I'll be saving it as app logo. Alright. So now let's create a app icon with this image. So search for app icon creator or generator in Google. So we used this appicon.co in our previous lesson. So let's use this website. So click at this icon and open up the image that we just saved. So this image has been loaded here, and we do not need to change anything over here. Click at generate. This will download zip file with all the images. Alright. So open it, and now we need to extract this zip file. So extract everything. So first let's change the app icon for Android. So copy these folders and move into the project, global chat, Android app, src, main, and inside of these resources paste the folder, and you want to replace everything inside of it. Alright. So now let's move back and change the app icon for iOS as well. So for iOS we need to copy this root folder over here. So copy it and then move to the project, global chat, iOS, runner, and then paste it over here and replace everything. Alright. So now we have changed the app icon for Android and iOS. So let's move into the VS Code. So now I want to change the display name of our app. So first we will do it for Android. So Control P and search for Android manifest.xml and make sure it is inside of this src/main. So in this file we have this Android label over here, which is set to global chat in lowercase. So let's change it to camel case. So global chat. Alright. Let's save this and let's do the same for iOS as well. So search Control P and then search for info.plist. And make sure this info.plist is inside of iOS/runner. Alright. So select it and then let's change this CS bundle display name from global chat to global chat in camel case. Save the file, and we are all done changing the app icon and app name. So now we can go ahead and start the debugging process. Launch emulator and start the debugging. So everything is working fine here, and if I minimize this, you can see that the app name and icon has been changed. Alright. So the next thing that I want to do now is to change the font in our app. So navigate into fonts.google.com, and for this project I'll be using Poppins font. You can search for any fonts and use that, but for now I'll be using this Poppins font in my app. So select the font and download family, and this will download a zip file with all the fonts inside of it. So we need to extract this zip file. So extract everything. And now move into that extracted folder, and from here we will be only selecting this Poppins regular. Alright, copy it, move to the project, global chat, and then let's create a new folder over here. And the folder name will be assets, and inside of this assets we'll be creating a new folder, fonts, and we'll also be using assets folder for images. So let's create a new folder, images as well. So inside of this fonts folder, let's paste the font that we copied and rename it to Poppins. Alright. So navigate into VS Code and you should be seeing these fonts loaded over here. So now we need to declare this font in popsec.yml. So move into this file, scroll a little bit, and then we have this font section over here. Select it and then control and /. This will uncomment the font section. Alright. So make sure you have only selected this part and uncommented it. So now let's change the family to Poppins, and let's change this font location to assets/font/poppins.ttf, and let's remove this. And make sure that this font name matches with the font inside of this assets folder. Alright. And we have changed this popsec.yml, so hard restart the app. So stop the debugging process and start it again. So everything is working fine on my side, but if you are getting error over here, then it is most probably due to the change in this popsec.yml file. So make sure that this folder and file name matches with your assets folder and the font file name, alright? So fix this and everything should work fine on your side too. So let's initialize or change the font in our app, and we'll be doing that in our material app. So inside of this material app we have this theme argument. So this expects a theme data, and inside of this theme data we have an argument called font family that can be used to change the font in our app, alright? But in our previous lesson we used this theme data.light or dark for changing the theme in our app, right? But this theme data.light or dark does not have this font family property. So instead of using this theme data.light or dark, we will be using theme data, and we will be providing the brightness argument for controlling the mode in our app. So for dark mode we can set this brightness to brightness.dark, and brightness.light will bring up the light mode, alright? And we have this argument use material 3 over here, so set it to true, and then we can access this argument font family over here, so set it to poppins. So make sure this matches with the font family in popsec.yaml. So now our app is using light mode, material 3 and poppins as a font. So that's it for this lesson, and in the next lesson we will be working on creating multiple screens for our app. So I'll see you at the next lesson. In this lesson we will be working with splash screen in our app. So what is splash screen and how does it work? Let's have a look. So in my emulator, let me open up this Gmail app. So this screen that you see over here is called a splash screen. The splash screen that we just saw is not only for the design purpose. The splash screen decides where to send user based on whether they are logged in or not. For instance, if they are logged in, it needs to take them to the dashboard, otherwise it directs them to the login screen, right? The splash screen handles the decision making when our app starts. So currently I am not logged into Gmail, so I am getting this screen. So let me log in an account. So now I am logged into this Gmail account, alright? So let me close everything. So now as I am logged into Gmail, if I open the app, I'll be getting this splash screen, and this splash screen will now forward me to dashboard instead of forwarding me to create an account or login screen, alright? So splash screen handles the decision making part when our app starts. This splash screen will have multiple logic that will decide where the user should be sent to next. And our app global chat will also have the login functionality, because in our app without login user cannot chat. So we also need an splash screen that determines whether the user should be sent to the login screen or the dashboard screen based on user login status. So now let's go ahead and create a splash screen, alright? So in this lib folder, let's create a new folder for screens, and here we'll be placing all the screens of our app. So the first thing that we want to create is the splash screen.dart. And inside of it, let's create a stateful widget and rename it to splash screen, alright? So now let's duplicate this splash screen and change this to login screen, alright? And for dashboard screen, let's duplicate it again and then rename it to dashboard underscore screen. So now we have two files over here, dashboard and login, and this splash screen will determine whether the user should be sent to this login or dashboard screen. So now let's rename this splash screen to dashboard screen for this file. And let's move to this login screen and change this to login screen as well, alright? So let's move into this main.dart file, and instead of this scaffold as a home, we'll be replacing it with the splash screen. So the main screen in our app has been changed to this splash screen, alright? So let's replace this placeholder with an scaffold, and this scaffold will not have an app bar, it will only have the body argument, alright? And this body argument will be the text widget. So we have this splash screen over here. So let's wrap this text widget with the center widget. So now from this screen we need to decide whether the user should be sent to this login screen or the dashboard screen. So for that, let me create an inbuilt function called initState. This function is executed for the first time the component is mounted or UI is rendered in our screen. So this is the perfect place for redirecting the user, alright? In this initState function, we will be checking the login status of user. For checking the login status, we can make an API request, we can communicate with the backend and so on. But as we do not have any backend for now, let's use future delayed over here. So future.delayed, and inside of it will be duration. And we'll be using the seconds argument over here. So 5 seconds. So the function that will be passing in the second parameter will be executed after 5 seconds. So let's create some function over here for redirecting to login or dashboard, alright? So void open dashboard. This is responsible for opening the dashboard. And another function void open login. So inside of this open dashboard, let's use navigator for navigating into the next screen. So navigator.push, first parameter is context, second parameter will be material page route, and this builder is a callback function, and this function should return a new class or the new screen, so return dashboard screen. And now let's import this, and this callback function will have this context as a callback value. Alright, so now this open dashboard will open up the dashboard screen. Let's copy it and use it in our open login, and let's replace this with login screen and import it. Alright, so here open dashboard function will open the dashboard screen, and open login will open the login screen. Alright, so let me pass this open dashboard in the future delete, so that dashboard is opened after 5 seconds of a splash screen. So now let's navigate into this dashboard screen and change this placeholder to any scaffold, and this scaffold will have a F bar with the text widget as a title. And let's do the same for this login screen as well. So scaffold, and let's import this scaffold, and then this will also have an F bar with text widget as an F bar title. So moving to this splash screen, and here you can see that after 5 seconds open dashboard will be triggered, and this will open the dashboard screen. And I have hot restarted the app now. So here is the splash screen, and after 5 seconds this dashboard has opened up. And because I have navigated to this screen from another screen, I am getting this back button, and if I press this, then I will be navigated back into this splash screen. But we cannot allow user to navigate back into this splash screen once the dashboard or login screen has been opened up. So for that, instead of using this navigator.push, we'll be using navigator.push replacement. This will replace the current screen with the new screen, and user cannot navigate back to the previous screen. Alright, so let's hot restart, and after 5 seconds we are redirected into this dashboard, and this time we are not getting this back button. So this is our main page now. So let's replace this navigator.push with push replacement. Alright, and instead of this open dashboard, let me change this to open login. So hot restart the app, and after 5 seconds of splash screen, login screen should be displayed. And here is the login screen. And this is how a splash screen works. Currently we are using this future delayed and displaying a static screen, but later on when we will start working with an Firebase authentication, we will check the actual authentication status of the user and forward to screens accordingly. So in the next lesson we will be working on Firebase authentication. So I'll see you at the next lesson. In this lesson, we'll be working with Firebase Authentication. Firebase Authentication is like a ready-made keycard system for your app. Instead of creating your own system for users to sign up and sign in, Firebase provides a pre-built solution. It helps you manage who can access your app by handling tasks like creating accounts, verifying identities, and allowing users to log in securely. And this Firebase authentication has several methods for login like email and password, phone number, social media, and much more, making it easier for developers to implement user authentication without starting from scratch. Now before we start implementing Firebase authentication in our app, we need to enable it in our Firebase project. So navigate into your Firebase project, click at build, and then you'll see this authentication over here. Click at get started, and now we need to allow some sign-in method in our app. And the most popular and widely used is the email and password authentication, so we'll be using that. And if you want to add any other providers for signing in or for signing up, you can search for the documentation of a certain provider and then you can integrate it in your Flutter app. But for this project, we'll be using this email and password authentication, so click at it, and now we need to enable it in our Firebase project. And we don't want this email link, so leave it disabled and then click at save. So this will enable email and password authentication in our app. So now we need a plugin for Firebase authentication, so let's move into the VS Code. And currently we do not have any account that we can sign in. So first we need to work on sign up screen so we can create accounts. So let's duplicate this login screen and rename it to sign up screen. And let's change this name as well. And change this app title to sign up. So for navigating into this sign up screen, let's create a button in our login screen. So let's use home or this body argument in scaffold, and this will have a column as a child and some children inside of it. So the first children element is the text widget with text don't have an account, and then the second element will be the elevated button with on pressed as an anonymous function, and then child is a text widget with the text sign up now. Alright, and now when this is clicked, I want to open up the sign up screen. So for that, let's move into this splash screen and copy this navigator code from any of this function, open dashboard or open login, and then let's paste it in this login screen elevated button function. Alright, and from here we will be launching this sign up screen, and this needs to be imported from our project. So now if I click at this, we'll be getting the sign up screen, and this time we'll only be using this push, not push replacement, because we need back button functionality in this screen, right? So hot restart, we have this splash screen, and then we are forwarded to this login screen, and if I click at this, I'll be navigated into this sign up screen. So now let's create a form over here so we can create an account in our Firebase authentication system. So for creating an account, we need two fields, email and password. So let's create an email and password form in our sign up screen. So let's use this body argument over here with this column widget, and it will have multiple children. First children will be the text field, and we have this text field for email. So let's provide label to it using decoration argument. So decoration equals to input decoration, and we have this label which expects a widget. So text widget with the text email. Alright. And then let's provide some padding in our column. And then let's duplicate this for the password field and rename this to password. And now let's use the sized box over here to provide some spacing between them. And let's copy this sized box and use it over here. And then the last component will be the elevated button. And in onPressed we will have this anonymous function, and child will be the text widget with text sign up or create an account. So if you have a look at this password field, this is a plain text field. So we need to change this so that the password characters are hidden, right? So for that we can use this obscured text over here and set this to true. So this will change this field to a password field. Alright. And then we have a few other arguments here. So we need to disable suggestions. So enable suggestions is set to false, and then autocorrect will be set to false as well. So everything seems alright in this form. Let's increase this padding a little bit, and let's increase the height between this text field as well. So now it seems alright. So now we'll be working on form validation, because when user clicks this create account, then we cannot pass empty email or password for creating an account. So now we need to convert this sign up screen into a sign up form. So for that, let's wrap this padding widget with the form widget. So wrap this with an widget, and the widget is the form widget. Alright. And now we need the key to validate the form. So let's create a variable over here for the key. So var, and let's use the form name as user form equals to global key, and then angle brackets form state, angle bracket close, and then parenthesis. Now we can use this as a key of our form. Alright. So now we can use this variable for checking or validating the form. So inside of this elevated button on pressed, we can check the validation. So if user form dot current state and then the exclamation sign dot validate function, then inside of this curly braces we will be executing the function for creating an account. So this create function logic will only execute if the form is valid. Alright, so let's change this text field. So Ctrl D, select them all, and let's change them to text form field. So we have an access to the argument validator. Alright, so let's use this validator argument over here, which will have a callback function with the callback value, and we'll be checking this value if this value is null or this value is empty. Then we'll be returning a error string from here. So email is required. So let's copy this argument and paste this in password field as well, and rename this to password. Alright. So if user clicks at this create account without typing anything, then they will be getting this error. So the only thing left now is to create some controllers for getting the values from inside of this text field. So text editing controller, and I'll be naming it as email equals to text editing controller class. So let's duplicate this and change this to password. So now let's assign controllers to this text field. So controller will be the email and the controller for this password field will be the password. So now we are ready for sending email and password to Firebase Authentication for creating an account. So in the next lesson, we will be installing Firebase Authentication package and then we will be creating our first global chat account. So I'll see you at the next lesson. In this lesson, we will be working with Firebase Authentication for creating user accounts and logging them into our global chat app. So let's get started. So for communicating with Firebase Authentication for creating and logging in user, we need Firebase Auth package. So navigate into pub.dev and search for this Firebase Auth package. Switch to installing tab and copy this installation code. Now navigate into VS Code and then paste it in your terminal. If terminal is not open, you can open it from view and then terminal, or you can use this terminal tab and then new terminal. Alright. Once the package is installed, let's hard restart our app. Stop debugging and start debugging again. So after the app has started, let's move into the sign up screen. And now we are ready for creating an account in Firebase Authentication. So let's import the package. So import package Firebase Auth /Firebase Auth . So here let's create a function for creating an account. So void create account, and inside of this function we will be using Firebase Auth for creating user account. So for that we need to access Firebase Auth from the package. So Firebase Auth, and we need to get the instance of Firebase. So Firebase Auth.instance, and then we have this function over here, create user with email and password, right? And this has two required argument, email and password. And email will be using email.text from text editing controller, and then password.text over here. All right. And this create user with email and password function will take some time to execute because it needs to create an account in our Firebase project, right? So we'll be using this await statement here, and this await statement needs this function to be of async type. So let's use async over here. And in async function, this needs to be wrapped with the future. So while using this create user with email and password, if the email is incorrect or not well formatted, or if the email already exists, then this function will throw an error. So for catching the error on runtime, we will be wrapping this with try catch block. Alright. So we'll be placing this code inside of this try block. And if this function throws an exception, then we'll be catching that using this catch block. And now inside of this catch block, I'll be placing this print statement only. Later on, we'll modify this. So now let's use this create account function in our elevated button. So if everything is okay with the form, then we'll be calling this create account function. Alright. And again, let's move into this create account function. And here you can see that we are printing this error over here, but we are not printing anything if the account is created. So let's print account created successfully. So now let me try creating an account over here. So now if I click at this create account, then in our debug console, you can see that account is created successfully, right? So you can see it here. So this has created account. So let's navigate into the Firebase project. And inside of this build section, we have this authentication over here. And in this users tab, you can see the account that is recently created. And here you can see this email, but you will not be able to get the password because password is encrypted and is saved securely in Firebase Authentication. Even though you are the administrator of this Firebase, you will not be able to see user password. It is encrypted and is kept secretly. So the first column in this table is the identifier, and we have this email address over here. And the second one is the provider. As we are using email and password authentication, I am getting this email icon over here. And we can also see the created date and last signed date. And here we have a unique ID for a user that is automatically assigned to the user while creating an account. This will not change, and we can use this ID for identifying our users in the database. So now the account has been created. Let's move into VS Code. So this email address was used to create an account previously. And if I try to create an account again with the same email address, then this function will throw an exception or error, and our catch block will catch that error. So if I try to create an account, if I click it, then here you can see that the email is already in use, right? So this has been triggered because this is throwing an exception, and our catch statement is catching the error and displaying it. But we are not providing any feedback to the user, and this print statement will only print it in our debug console, which cannot be viewed by user. So we need to create an alert dialog or something like that for notifying user that there is error in our Firebase authentication process, and user can correct the error and try again. Alright, and we could use alert dialog for notifying the user, but instead we will use something else, and that is a snack bar. A snack bar is a feature provided by Scaffold in which a message will be popped up from the bottom to notify the user about some error messages or messages in general. Alright, and this is how you use it. So at first we need to create a snack bar. So we start by typing snack bar, which is a data type. So now let's give a name to this snack bar, and I'll be naming it as message snack bar equals to, and this is a snack bar, so snack bar, and this will have a required argument content, which is a widget. So we can pass text widget over here. So in this text widget, let me keep a simple error message. So error creating an account. Alright, and now we need to access the scaffold messenger for showing this snack bar or for showing this message. Alright, so scaffold messenger, here it is, dot of context. So we are trying to show this scaffold messenger in our context, and then dot show snack bar, and inside of this parenthesis we will be passing this message snack bar. Alright, so now let's have a look at how this snack bar looks like in our app. So create account, and here you can see this snack bar. This is a simple message provided by Scaffold that can be used to provide feedback to the user, and instead of using this error creating account, I'll be using the actual error from this Firebase authentication and change this to an string. Alright, so save the code, and now if I try to create an account, then I'll be getting the exact error from this Firebase authentication. But the message over here is not well formatted, and we'll be working on that later. Alright, and I can also customize this snack bar. For instance, provide a background color. So control space, and you can see all the argument that can be passed. Let me use this background color and set it to colors.red. So if I try creating an account, then you can see that I have this error and I'm getting this red snack bar over here. So the next thing that I want to do now is to forward the user to this dashboard screen when the account creation process is successful. So let's move into this splash screen and copy the navigation part from this open dashboard and paste it in our sign up screen. So when the account is created, we'll be forwarding user to this dashboard screen. Alright. So when the account is created with this function, that user is automatically logged in our system. And this Firebase auth.instance will hold the data of a logged in user. And we can use this Firebase auth instance for getting the user data in other screens as well. So this part of our code will create an account and log in this user. And then user will be navigated into this dashboard screen. And here we need to get the instance of Firebase auth. So let's import this Firebase auth package over here. So now let's create a variable over here for getting the Firebase auth instance. So var user equals to Firebase auth dot instance. So this Firebase auth dot instance will have an authentication status, and instance dot current user will have the data of a currently logged in user. Alright. So now let's try displaying the email address of currently logged in user. So let's create a body in our scaffold, give a column to it, and it will have a text widget as a first children, welcome. And then in the second widget, we'll have this text widget which will hold the email address of that user. So user, so this variable dot email. Alright, and this should be an string, so we need to do dot to string, but this user and this user dot email can be empty. So let's wrap this and provide a fallback value. So if this email does not exist, then we'll be providing an empty string over here. And if this user also does not exist, then by providing this question mark, we can fall back directly to an empty string. So let me try creating a valid user account. So let me change this the clip vibe to clip vibe 2 and create an account. So account creation is successful. And here you can see that this Firebase instance has saved the logged in user, and this current user, using this current user, we are able to get the data of a currently logged in user. Alright. And we can use this Firebase auth.instance or Firebase auth.instance.current user in any part of our Flutter app, in any screen. Alright. And in this dashboard screen, we have this back button. But if you have a look at the sign up screen, you can see that we are using this push replacement, but still we are getting this back button. So let me press this back button, and you can see that instead of navigating into the sign up screen, we are navigated to the login screen. So this push replacement will only work for one screen in the stack. it will replace only one screen. But if you want to replace everything in the stack, you should be using this push and remove until. This will remove every screen in the stack and then open new screen without the back compatibility. And this will expect a function in the third argument, a callback function with a route as a callback value, and from inside of it we need to return a boolean, and returning false will remove everything and make this screen our new main screen. Alright, so now let's test this by creating a new account. So in this text field, validation is not working properly, so let's move into the text field code, and here let's use this auto validate mode and then set it to auto validate mode dot on user interaction. Alright, and let's use this in another text field as well. So now if I create an account here, then you can see that I am navigated into this dashboard screen and I am not getting this back button over here. Everything is removed and this dashboard screen is now the main screen. So now let's create a sign out button over here. So the next element or next child will be the elevated button with onPressed as an anonymous function, and child will be the text widget with the text logout. And when this logout button is clicked, I want to log out this current user, so we need this Firebase auth.instance. So in this button onPressed, I'll be placing this Firebase auth.instance and then .sign out. This will sign out our currently logged in user. Alright, and when the user logs out, I want to send them to this splash screen, and I want to remove all of the screen in the stack and make this splash screen my main screen. So we need this push and remove until. Alright, so copy this and let's take this code into our dashboard screen, and when the user has logged out, we'll be sending them to the splash screen. Alright, so let's change this dashboard screen to splash screen and import this from the file. And this sign out function might also take some time, so let's keep this await statement here and change this function to an async function. Alright, this will ensure that before navigating into this splash screen, our user has signed out. So if I click at this, I am navigated to this splash screen and then forwarded to this login screen. We are navigated to this login screen because in splash screen we have this hard-coded open login function over here, but instead of hard-coding it here, we'll be checking the login status of user using Firebase Authentication, and then we'll be forwarding the user to either the dashboard screen or the login screen. Alright, and we'll be doing that in the next lesson. So in the next lesson, we'll be working on splash screen conditional forwarding and then the login screen. So I'll see you at the next lesson.